Trades are one of the biggest components when it comes to the world of sports. It always brings a sense of fascination, excitement, and perhaps a sense of shock to a lot of fans. And many trades are very impactful when it comes to the future of a particular franchise and potentially the future of an entire league in some cases. While most players who are big time players usually spend their entire career with one franchise, usually the one that drafted them, there are some dudes that are getting traded so many times that they're swapping their jerseys as much as we change our underwear. And when it comes to hockey, there are numerous guys who share the title of being the most traded players of all time. Hey there, guys. So this is a compilation of my most traded players in NHL history videos. This was a three-part series, so in case if you missed any of my previous videos on this, then feel free to check out this compilation video, which will have them all in the order if they were posted from start to finish. Just be mindful that the sound quality might be different, mainly because this was well before I got my current audio equipment set up, so just be mindful that the audio might sound a bit different here, but everything else will basically be identical. So I hope you understand, enjoy, and I'll see you around. So number one, we have Jean-Jacques Dagneau, otherwise known as JJ Dagneau. His professional playing career lasted from 1981 until 2001, in which he played a couple years in the QMJHL before being drafted in 1984 in the NHL draft by the Vancouver Canucks at 10th overall. His playing career spanned a huge chunk of the league. He played for the Vancouver Canucks, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Montreal Canadiens, the St. Louis Blues, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Anaheim Ducks, the New York Islanders, the Nashville Predators, the Phoenix Coyotes, and last but not least, the Minnesota Wild. In total, he was traded 7 times in his professional playing career. Notably, he was traded twice in the middle of the 1995-96 season, going from Montreal to St. Louis and then from St. Louis to Pittsburgh. His career numbers aren't necessarily that spectacular. He played just one game shy of 900 professional games in the NHL. He had 250 points, 687 penalty minutes, 99 career playoff games, and 100 penalty minutes. He did win a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens in 1993, in which in that year he had 20 playoff games and only 4 points. So not necessarily a big time player, so to speak. For Dagneau, however, he did have some pretty decent production and had a very good physical presence during his playing career, which made him a highly coveted player for a lot of NHL clubs. And in some cases, he would play pretty lengthy playoff seasons. I mentioned in 1993 with Montreal. In 95-96, when he got to Pittsburgh, he actually played a very pivotal role for that team. And in the latter half of his career, he actually played for a number of expansion clubs. Most notably, he played for the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim in their first few seasons. He also was a part of the inaugural Nashville Predators team in 1998-99. And his final year in the NHL was in the 2000-2001 season, where he played just one NHL game with the Minnesota Wild, while also playing in 44 IHL games before deciding to call it in. Number 2, Václav Prospal. Originally from Czechia, had a pretty solid NHL career playing from 1993 till 2013. He was a former third-round pick of the Philadelphia Flyers in the 93 entry draft, where he went 71st overall, and his playing career was relatively consistent. He played in over 1,100 career NHL games, playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, the Ottawa Senators, the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Anaheim Ducks, the New York Rangers, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. He totaled 510 assists and 255 goals for 765 points. He also played in 65 playoff games over his 20-year career, putting up 35 points in the postseason. His career saw him get traded 6 times in total, twice in 2001 and twice in 2008. Most of his career was spent with at least a few bottom feeder teams that weren't necessarily very competitive, but he technically thrived very well, and his consistency actually landed him in pretty good spots. I believe his career high in points in a season was like 80 points, and even into his late 30s, he was still putting up somewhere between like 50 and 55 points a season. His final year in the NHL was in the 2013 lockout shortened season, where he only played in 48 NHL games for the Columbus Blue Jackets, while also playing in 19 games in the Czech League as a result of the lockout. Brent Ashton. So Brent Ashton is more of an old school kind of guy. His professional playing career was from 1975 until 1994. He was drafted 26th overall in the 1979 NHL draft by the Vancouver Canucks, and his playing career was mostly marred by his trade history. He was having some issues with staying healthy during the high-flying 80s and 90s, but his career was mostly identified by the fact that he was a pretty solid pure goal scorer, as his career numbers saw him score somewhere between 15 and 30 goals in most of his seasons in the NHL. He was traded 8 times, which actually makes him tied for the most trades in an individual playing career. Most notably, he was traded twice on the same day in 1981. That was probably the most significant stretch here. He played for the Vancouver Canucks, the Colorado Rockies, the New Jersey Devils, the Minnesota North Stars, the Quebec Nordiques, the Detroit Red Wings, the original Winnipeg Jets, the Boston Bruins, and last but not least, the Calgary Flames. His final year saw him play just 32 games in the NHL for Calgary, while also playing 16 games in the IHL. He finished his career just shy of 1,000 games played, finishing at 998 total. He scored 298 goals, 629 points, and 85 career playoff games, in which in those games he scored 49 points. Jeff Norton played from 1984 to 2002, a very lengthy NHL playing career. He was drafted 62nd overall by the New York Islanders in the 1984 entry draft. His career saw him play with a multitude of teams. In total, he got traded 8 times in his career. Most notably, he was traded twice in the year 1998, and I'm not talking seasons, I'm talking the calendar year. And interestingly enough, he was either traded by or traded to the same team, that being the San Jose Sharks. In total, he played for the New York Islanders, the San Jose Sharks, the St. Louis Blues, the Edmonton Oilers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Florida Panthers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and last but not least, the Boston Bruins. His career numbers aren't very impressive. He played in 799 NHL games. He only recorded 52 goals and 384 points in total for his career, alongside of 615 penalty minutes. He also played in 65 career playoff games, where he recorded just 25 points. His numbers, if you dissected them even further, according to HockeyDB.com, his career high in points was just 50, and he never reached that mark again in his career, and that was in 1993, by the way, and never played anything more than 69 games for a season. Matthew Schneider played from 1986 until 2010, so he is the longest tenured player in this video. First drafted by the Montreal Canadiens in 1987's NHL entry draft, being drafted 44th overall by Montreal, and he spent a good chunk of time of his career with the Canadiens organization. He did win the Stanley Cup in 1993, minimal role in that year's cup run, but he did have a significant amount of success at the NHL level that year. In total, he was traded 7 times in his career. In some cases, they were blockbuster trades. So, for example, he was involved in the trade that saw Wendell Clark return to the Toronto Maple Leafs by the New York Islanders. He played with the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Islanders, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the New York Rangers, the LA Kings, the Detroit Red Wings, the Anaheim Ducks, the Atlanta Thrashers, the Vancouver Canucks, and last but not least, the Phoenix Coyotes. It should also be noted that he was drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets in the 2000 NHL expansion draft, but he never actually signed with Columbus and instead actually signed with the LA Kings, which explains why he actually played in LA in the first place. His career numbers are also very impressive for his career. He played in 1,289 professional games in the NHL level. He recorded 223 goals along with 520 assists for 743 points, alongside of 1,245 penalty minutes. In the playoffs, he played in 114 games where he recorded 54 points and 155 penalty minutes. Mike Sillinger. So Mike Sillinger's career goes from 1987 until 2009. He was drafted in 1989's NHL draft by the Detroit Red Wings, 11th overall, coming from the Regina Pats of the WHL. He holds the NHL record for most trades in a single playing career, having been traded 10 times overall. Most notably, he was traded twice on the same day in 2003. He played for the Detroit Red Wings, the Anaheim Ducks, the Vancouver Canucks, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Florida Panthers, the Ottawa Senators, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Phoenix Coyotes, the St. Louis Blues, Nashville Predators, and last but not least, the New York Islanders. Most notably, out of the 12 NHL teams that he had played for, he only played a full campaign in the NHL for 4 of them, that being the Detroit Red Wings, the Vancouver Canucks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the New York Islanders. In addition, his career did bring some form of success, but this was mostly in the minor league level. Most notably, in 1992, he did win the Calder Cup with the Adirondack Red Wings, which was the AHL affiliate for the Detroit Red Wings. He was a rookie, and he actually led all players in points that season. His totals for his career aren't super impressive, but there were some notable feats. He played in 1,049 NHL games, recording 240 goals and 308 assists for 548 points and 644 penalty minutes to boot. And in the playoffs, he played in 43 games and recorded 18 points. Doug Gilmour was a former 7th round pick in the 1982 NHL draft by the St. Louis Blues, and his playing career in the NHL lasted from 1983 until 2003. The peak of his career was, of course, in the late 80s and early 90s when he won a Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames, and is most well known for his time with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the early 1990s. Over the course of his career, Gilmour was traded 5 times, and arguably you could probably make a whole video of his trade history alone because it is quite extensive and there's a lot of moving parts there. Outside of St. Louis, Calgary, and Toronto, he also played for the New Jersey Devils, Chicago Blackhawks, Buffalo Sabres, and last but not least the Montreal Canadiens. And he was relatively productive over the course of his career. In his final career in Montreal, he played in 61 games and recorded 30 points before being traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs and ended his career playing 1 game in a Leaf sweater, and that was the end of it in the 02-03 season. Gilmour finished his career with just over 1,470 games played. He recorded 964 assists and 450 goals for 1,414 points, alongside of just over 1,300 penalty minutes. And he also has a very stellar playoff resume, having played in 182 games, recording 60 goals and 128 assists for 188 points, alongside of 235 penalty minutes. Peter Zezel was a former 2nd round pick of the Philadelphia Flyers in the 1983 NHL draft, and his career lasted from 1984 until 1999 at the NHL level. In total, he was traded 6 times over the course of his career, and it's also significant enough that you could probably make another video on that as well. Outside of Philly, he played for the St. Louis Blues, Washington Capitals, Toronto Maple Leafs, Dallas Stars, New Jersey Devils, and last but not least the Vancouver Canucks. He was a very productive defenseman in the NHL. He played in 873 games and recorded 219 goals and 389 assists for 608 points, alongside of 435 penalty minutes. He also has an extensive playoff career with 131 games played, recording 25 goals, 39 assists for 64 points, alongside of 83 penalty minutes. Outside of the NHL, Zezel's career actually ended in the province of Ontario, where he played in the OHASR, which is now a defunct Ontario Senior Hockey League, in which he last played for a team called the Hornets, where he played just 4 games, recording 6 assists and 6 penalty minutes. And last but not least, for this video, we have Sergio Momesso. Momesso was a former 2nd round pick of the Montreal Canadiens in the 1983 NHL draft, and his career lasted from 1983 until 1997. Known as more of a physical presence on the ice, he was known for being a very hard-hitting player and not being more of a heavy point producer, but was on some very notable teams over the 1980s and 90s. He was traded 6 times over the course of his career, having played for the Montreal Canadiens, St. Louis Blues, Vancouver Canucks, Toronto Maple Leafs, and the New York Rangers. Outside of the NHL, he had some instances of playing in Europe. In particular, he played for Milan in the Italian League for a hot minute in the middle of the 90s, and he actually ended his playing career in Germany, having played a couple of seasons in the German Elite League, playing notably for Cologne and for Nuremberg. He actually finished his final season in Cologne, playing 31 games, recording 6 goals, 11 assists, and 17 points, alongside of 76 penalty minutes. He finished his NHL career having played 710 games with 152 goals and 193 assists for 345 points, along with a whopping 1,557 penalty minutes. In the playoffs, he played in 119 games, recording 18 goals, 26 assists for 44 points, alongside of 311 penalty minutes. And that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this one. Thank you again, and I'll see you all in my next video.